Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to WSB's Stony Brook. I'm now joined by Andy Cizek. He's a member of multiple bands, notably Makari, Monuments, and WVNDER. How about you give a brief history of your time in the music industry and give a kind of a brief bio of yourself for people who may not know you?
Hey Kyle, thanks for having me. My name's Andy Cizek. Like you said, I'm in a few bands. Let's see, brief history. I guess WVNDER is probably the most notable thing, the first thing that I did. We've been going since, I want to say, 2013. I've been in bands in the past, but none of them really did much. So WVNDER started touring a little bit. We did a tour with Makari, and that's how I got linked up with them.
Yeah.
I became their vocalist shortly after that. So I've been singing with Makari for 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah.
And then recently I've joined the band Monuments from
in the
Europe.
past last month was
Yeah. I've been touring with them for a few months, but we made it official recently. So yeah, I guess you can say I'm pretty busy and just out here doing the best I can.
Yeah, we'll talk about kind of like handling a free band system in a little bit, but let's just go back to the beginning. What led to you becoming a vocalist when you were younger?
My story is not super unique. My father was always a musician, and he was a guitar player and a singer and doing a lot of rock band stuff when he was younger. So I guess I inherited some of that from him, and he kind of brought me up just listening to a lot of rock and roll. So right off the bat, I was
just exposed to music.
Yeah, but I didn't really find it. I didn't find my calling, if you will, until I was probably 15 or so. I had been playing guitar for a bit, but I was never that good. Once I started singing, though, I think I just slowly gained the confidence to start singing when I was about 14 or 15, and I think I just played like my high school talent shows and stuff like that. And eventually I was like, yeah, this is, I'm going to be a rock star. Rock star, term can be very loose. But I just came up from music and fell in love with it as a teenager. And I went on my first tour when I was 18. And pretty much ever since then, I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. So, been trying to make a name for myself ever since.
Going on kind of on that note, what were maybe some big influences for you growing up, whether it's a vocalist or just a band that you listen to?
Yeah, I always do bad with this question because I forget.
There's so many.
Yeah, dude, I know. I mean, the early days were like Green Day, My Chemical Romance, Jimmy Eat World, bands like that. And then gradually I started getting into metal. I became such a metal fan. I think it was like, it went from like Avenged Sevenfold into like Atreyu, into like The Devil Wears Prada, like a lot of metalcore.
Just that like slow transition.
A Day to Remember too. I was really into pop punk, so yeah, man, a lot of those bands influenced me. I think 30 Seconds to Mars was an early influence for me too. And then once I found like the post-hardcore scene through Dance Gavin Dance and bands like that, I just went down that rabbit hole and was super into all that stuff. So all those bands, all those post-hardcore bands influenced me a lot. And then on the metal side, it was just I think I got really into Under Oath and Of Mice and Men in the early days, and then there was like Every Time I Die.
All the OG.
Yeah, man. I mean, OG for me.
Yeah.
The older generations have a totally separate set of bands they probably call OG, but for me, yeah, those are my roots, and I still love them. I wouldn't be where I am today without them. So, yeah.
So when you're getting into, these heavier bands, when did you start trying to do the like unclean vocals and getting like used to those and getting better?
Yeah, the screams. I think basically as soon as I started listening to metal, I was very intrigued by the whole thing, and I was like, I need to figure out how to do this. So I was a teen, and going to high school and just pretty much screaming my lungs out, just blowing out my voice. I had no idea how to do it. From an early age, I totally sucked. But then I slowly started to
It's like it
care
started
more
to
about
click.
technique, and yeah. It definitely took a while, but it was just something that I was fascinated by,
Hmm.
and I thought it was really cool that there's so much
Like,
nuance
yeah,
to
there's
it.
a lot of variety to it as
Yeah,
well.
lots of variety, and it's a pretty cool. I just thought it was like an interesting thing
Mm.
that a goal that I set for myself. I didn't know if I was gonna use it or anything like
Mm.
for real life, but music was just a hobby, so I was like, let's do it, and scream, and I would suck, and then I got a little better,
Mm.
uh, and then I started taking it seriously. I think not until I was in my 20s would I say I was any good
Mm.
at it. So yeah, took some time.
One of the things you mentioned during high school was gaining your confidence as a singer, and kind of like one of the biggest things in the industry is to distinguish yourself from the pack and make your like voice kind of original. I kind of noticed it listening to your earlier stuff, but did you kind of like notice that like going into Wanderer that like you had this confidence going in songwriting as well as like your vocal style?
Um, yeah, that's a cool question. I think everybody starts out kind of finding themselves, and for me, I was a pretty generic vocalist, just trying to sound like other bands, and I don't know, man. It took it took going through a few bands for me to start really
Hmm.
grasping the concept of songwriting and finding my own sound, finding my own voice, not just trying to mimic other vocalists.
Hmm.
It was a slow process, but it was something that I started to take a lot of pride in and really push myself. I realized that there's so much that I could learn
Hmm.
if I opened up to it, and just developed my comfort zone after several years, and it's progressed from there. I wouldn't say it was like a conscious decision to just be like, all right, I
Yeah.
don't want to sound like this. But I just I guess I just figured out what I was good at and what I gravitated towards,
Hmm.
and slowly it became like my sound. And
Yeah.
I learned a lot about songwriting just from recording
Hmm.
and working with other talented people. So it was a journey that I made with friends,
Hmm.
um, and I had rivals and stuff that just like basically like, oh, we're sort of like we're all friends, but
Yeah.
competing with each other
Just
in a
making
healthy
each other
healthy
better.
way. Yeah.
Healthy
So
competition.
all that stuff, all those variables kind of made me who I am.
All right, so we kind of mentioned it before. You joined Monuments about 2 months ago. You've been touring with them, but how did this all come together? Was this after working with Nub Sandstreet with his solo music?
Yeah, I think that probably played some sort of part in bridging that gap. But really it was because I was on YouTube a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And I made it a point to try to put myself out there any chance I could. I knew Ollie from the band for whatever reason. I actually don't really remember why we became friends, but yeah, we'd just been in talks for a while, and he had seen my stuff, and I think liked what I was about.
Mm.
And then I was like, I'm gonna do a Monuments cover when they dropped their latest album, Phonesis. And I think that helped show them what I was capable of.
Mm.
And when they decided to part ways with their vocalist, it was, I guess, an, a
Obvious
decision
decision.
that was, yeah,
No,
well,
yeah.
it worked out. So, yeah, I'm really stoked about it and just grateful for the opportunity.
So at this point, how has it been like trying to balance all three projects, especially with kind of like that new resurgence that Wanderer has, which we'll probably talk about in a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I wouldn't be able to do this if I didn't have music as a job. I don't have to do like I'm lucky enough that I don't have
Yeah.
like another job or part time. Like it's all music all the time. So I get to just dive in and
Mm.
what once you eliminate that 9 to 5 thing,
Yeah.
which took a
And
long time.
make it your own 9 to 5.
Yeah, and I'm by no means like rolling in dough. It's just I can pay my bills now
Mm.
with music, but that's all I have to focus on.
Mm.
So I don't know. I've got a lot of creative energy to do a lot of different stuff, and since my voice, well, I guess I have this ability to this range or whatever you want to call it
Yeah.
to do different genres, and I'm just hungry for it, you know. So that fuels me. I just want to create as much as I can,
Yeah.
and I don't know, man. It's not as hard as you think. Um, it's hard though. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's definitely a challenge, especially with the scheduling. And technically, I'm involved in more than just
Yeah.
those 3 bands. I have Termina with Nick Nocturnal and
Hmm.
another unannounced thing, and then the solo stuff. But I don't know, man. I'm like insatiable when it comes to creating music,
Yeah.
and I don't really think about it. I just make it work. Um, the
Yeah, I
best I
think
can.
that's like the most important thing is just kind of making that step towards transitioning to making being a musician a full-time job instead of trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
bounce whatever it may be
Right.
nine
Now
to
I was
five.
doing that. I was doing that for a long time, and it was tough because I was like a traveling sound engineer for a while, an audio technician, and that stuff
Yeah.
was just sort of sucking the energy out of me. And my ears would be fatigued, and so I wouldn't have a lot of drive to work on music back in those days.
Yeah.
But I made a choice. I just decided that I really wanted to go for it and dive in, and um, yeah, slowly over time, it started getting better to the point where I could feed
Yeah.
myself with it, and that's why I'm able to do so much music, just
Yeah.
because I don't have to worry about that other side of things.
How has it been like adjusting to writing with Monuments, especially on the new record, since it's really different from like your previous work in like Makari and Wanderer?
Yeah, man, it's definitely a challenge. Monuments is the most progressive and technical sort of project that I've been involved with, and it's more brain power, I guess you could say. It takes a little more effort
Hmm.
writing to the trickier, I mean, time
Yeah,
signatures
rhythms.
and just the riffs and but at the same time it's not unnatural for me because I've grown up listening to so much metal and I've always been into prog, you
Mm.
know, periphery
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it's something I've always wanted to do, and the band's also just really easy to work with. Me and Ollie, one of the guitar players, we kind of have a thing going with our workflow that's similar.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean challenging, but at the same time pretty smooth of a transition. It feels like I'm in the right place.
So, writing with those guys in Monuments, how has the experimentation process has been going with like the unclean vocals, which like you don't get to do as much as in the other projects?
Basically, I just dove in and did what was natural. Um, I have I have the screaming sound that I sort of gravitate towards, that I use a lot. But still, I've been pushing myself out of my
Yeah.
comfort zone more, especially for live performances. We haven't recorded too much new material yet, but we do
Hmm.
have stuff in the works. You know, we have recorded some,
Yeah.
and it's been cool. I don't know what the future is going to hold in terms of how much experimenting I'm going to be doing with my voice, but I'm open to whatever, and I'm hoping that the guys are going to push me out of my comfort range, and you know, I'll be able to really just go free with it. Like I said, it's just a really good opportunity for me to experiment with my voice.
So in February and kind of in the springtime, you're going overseas to tour with Monuments.
Hmm.
What are you looking forward to on that tour?
I'm just really looking forward to seeing new places and new faces. Before Monuments, I haven't had the chance to go overseas at
Mm,
all. The most I've ever been in the country was Canada.
mm,
So being able to travel and meet people from all over is such a privilege. And it's a little bit overwhelming, honestly. I'm just looking forward to trying not to fuck up and do a good job. Um, I think since I've been to Europe a couple times now, it'll be easier for me to get comfortable and really take in all it has to offer. But just the whole experience and absorbing as much as I
yeah.
can. It's not like the biggest culture shock, but there's definitely still a lot of differences.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
kind of
I
learning how the crowds react over there as well.
yeah, definitely. And I love that stuff. I love uh, learning how everyone's just a little bit different, depending on where you are. And
Mm.
um, yeah, the cultural differences are really cool and refreshing. So I always look forward to that.
All right, so let's talk a bit about Wanderer. I said it before, you guys had a little bit of a resurgence. You
Oh,
guys
yes.
had faced a whole bunch of obstacles, but you finally released a new record called
Yeah.
Nothing Stays. What was it like playing that like huge release show and kind of getting like all this positive feedback and just getting more confidence to continue this project?
I mean, it's been really great, dude. I wasn't sure if Wander was going to make it. At a certain point, we were all kind of burnt out, and I was doing a lot of other things,
Yeah.
and I don't know, we've just been through a lot. So to be able to continue on and make a new album meant a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
Wander is like my baby, pretty much. I really, really care about the band and the music and the fans.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that people were still interested after all these years, and a long period of time where we were kind of stagnant was super, super great. I'm really thankful that everyone has stuck around. The CD release show was amazing. It was so good to play with them again in my hometown
Mm-hmm.
because we don't really play shows much anymore.
Yeah.
But it felt really good to be playing those songs again with my friends. And yeah, dude, I'm just really thankful that people still care. Um, and I can still
Mm.
do it, and the guys are still jazzed about what we're working on. And
Yeah, I thought it
uh,
was crazy. Like right away, like you guys went straight to the studio. Like
yeah,
wow.
yeah, yeah. The writing process was kind of discombobulated for that album because we were all in different places. But yeah, we just were able to come together and in Wander fashion and do what we do, and people seem to like it, which makes me
Mm.
really happy because I really like that album too. And I think Nothing Stays is probably the most ambitious thing that we have tried so far.
Well, I want to thank you for spending some time with me to talk about your projects and kind of your musical career. One
Absolutely.
last question. What are maybe some tips or advice you can give some new vocalists coming out of the scene now?
I'd say just don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Even if you don't think you're good enough, you have to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, my first few shows, many shows, and my first many songs weren't what I would say I'm
Yeah.
proud of. Like, it's not something that I'd say, that was really good, but it made me into who I am. If I didn't have the courage to go out there and suck
Mm-hmm.
for a while, um, then I wouldn't be here now. So don't be afraid to just put yourself out there. Um, the time is now. There's no
Yeah.
reason to wait. So it's okay if your first whatever it's not perfect.
It's just
But you
about
got to start
improving.
somewhere, and then progress will come. So I was the most nervous kid on the planet, and I was still able to force myself to get up on stage, trembling and all. Um, so if I can do it, then you can too.
All right, how about you just share where people can keep up to date with you and all your projects?
Sure. You can always check me out on Facebook. Andy Cizek, or Twitter, Instagram. It's all the same. ANDYCIZEK. And then if you want to keep up with my YouTube, you can just search me on YouTube, and all my various projects, I guess, Wander with a V instead of an A. We got Makari and then Monuments. So if you just want to keep an eye on those socials, there's new music coming out all the time.
All right. Thanks again for joining me, Andy.
Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate it.
No problem. Everyone stay tuned.